Hello, my name is Taya, and welcome to the Police Accountability Report. As I always make clear at the beginning of this show, our job is to hold the politically powerful institution of policing accountable. To do so, we don't just focus on the bad behavior of individual cops. Instead, we take deep dives into a system that makes bad policing possible. And today, probably more than ever, that system is in our crosshairs. But before I get started, I want you to know that you can reach out to me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter or Facebook and share with me your evidence of police misconduct, and we might be able to investigate for you. And please like, share, subscribe, and comment on our videos. It really does help. Okay, that's out of the way. Now, what we wanted to do was follow up on a previous investigation. That's because after we told the story of a man's encounter with Texas police, the video generated so much interest, we decided to dig deeper into the details surrounding the story. And what we found out raised serious questions about the influence and purpose of police in small town America. Now, for those of you who missed it, a Texas resident named Randall Thompson bought a car at a Dallas police auction. The car, like many cars at police auctions, had been allegedly seized from a local drug dealer. After Thomas claimed the car, weeks after the auction, he was cleaning it out when he found drugs and guns in the car, which he threw away to prepare the car for his family. But during his ride in the newly purchased car, Thompson was pulled over by police in a small town called Crossroads, and I will let him tell you what happened next.
Wanted to look through the truck, and he got me out of the vehicle. He said that it looks like the truck has been stolen. I had all my receipts from buying it from the Dallas police impound just a couple of weeks before. And by this time, I've got 5 policemen around me, and they're all got their hands on their guns, and they're like, well, we got you now. We got you. But he asked me, can I search your vehicle? And as a gullible person that trusts the police, I said, well, sure. There's nothing in there. He said, well, Mr. Thompson, I'd like to look through your vehicle one more time, and we're going to let you go. Okay, that's great. Go ahead. So the 4th search, he reaches into my truck, and he runs out of there, and he grabs my phone and throws it on the ground, and he swings me around, and he's arresting me. And he's got the gear shifter knob off of the truck in his hands. But in the police report, and I think I've sent you a copy, he was able to take that gear shifter knob apart, and it had a stash in there. And they won't tell me what they found.
Now, the reason we reported on this in the first place is because it was a prime example of the idea we discussed at the top of the show, the system which makes bad policing possible and even encourages it. That's because, as we pointed out before, Thompson's case represents how systemic failures turn into destructive public policy. In this case, how the pursuit of profit via concepts like police auctions holds public safety captive and violates individuals' rights, all in the service of the worst aspects of capitalism. Well, what do I mean? Well, let's think about it. The 64-year-old Thompson had a receipt showing he recently purchased the car. He was pulled over under false pretense by a cop who clearly was looking for a reason to stop him not related to public safety. His crime of so-called possession is being prosecuted as a felony. The lawyer's fees and court costs are bankrupting him. Meanwhile, how is the public served by locking him up? Who exactly is the victim of the crime he committed? But this is not where the story ends. Since we first covered Thompson's case, we've been digging deeper into policing in Denton, Texas, the jurisdiction where Thompson is now being prosecuted. And what we found is startling and illustrates just how damaged American policing has become in light of this seemingly endless pursuit of profit over public safety. The data here raises questions about the police budget and use of resources. For more on the data and what it means, I'm joined by my reporting partner, Janis. Stephen, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Taya. I appreciate it.
So, Stephen, you took a deep dive into the budget of Denton, Texas. What did you learn?
Well, it's really interesting. There's not much information, but what I could find out was that Denton, basically, with its operating budget, spends about 57% on public safety. Now, I wanted to drill deeper into those numbers because I really wanted to know where this money was going in terms of policing. And so I sent an email to the city manager and said, hey, Can you break out the public safety budget for me? Can you tell me how much you're spending on policing, asset forfeiture? They sent me an email back, said they're still working on it. What's funny about that is this is for 2020. This year is almost over, and they still haven't published publicly the details about their budget, which I find to be extremely misleading.
Now, we've looked for evidence of for-profit policing, and you found some interesting patterns in the city's open data. What did you find?
Yeah, what we just went through all the citations so far in 2020 written, or traffic citations written by Denton police officers. About 8,000 have been written. Some of them are kind of comical, tinted windows, failure to change lane at an appropriate time, or just changing a lane. So it really raises some serious questions. And I think what was even more revealing is roughly 60% of the tickets were written to people that don't live in Denton. So how can you not argue there's some profit motive there in how they're pursuing this? And one thing that was also interesting is that when I went through the status of these cases, these people are being arraigned in court, which I still don't really understand. I've asked Denton officials about that. Why are they being arraigned in court for a failure to change lane or failure to move for an emergency vehicle? It raises really interesting questions because then they have to pay court costs.
Now, the data and the arrest of Mr. Thompson is illustrative of two concepts we've talked about before on this show: the destructiveness of proximity crimes and hegemonic policing. Can you talk a little bit about these ideas?
One of the things that's interesting about proximity crimes is it conveys criminality in people just for being near an object, which is really a bizarre thing. I mean, without doing an investigation into Mr. Thompson or knowing why those drugs are in there, even looking at the receipt from the auction, they make him guilty of a felony and basically destroy his life. And in the same fashion, having 8,000 traffic citations written by a police force, to 60% out-of-towners is hegemonic, it's projecting the power of policing rather than the value of law enforcement and public safety. These are classic examples of those series, and they should be taken seriously because that's what's going on.
Now, what's interesting about what we've learned covering this story is how policing across the country is not accustomed to routine scrutiny. I mean, it seems odd that a town spending roughly 57% of its discretionary budget on public safety would not be willing to break down the numbers. And a city where thousands of people are being cited for minor traffic infractions, they would feel compelled to explain the imperative behind the strategy. Sadly, that does not seem to be the case here. And this is not the first town or city we've covered that seems to have problems with transparency. In fact, our next guest understands this all too well and how difficult it can be to hold police accountable and how many tools they have to push back against those who try to do so. His name is James Freeman, and he's a popular cop watcher and auditor who's been keeping tabs on police across the country and right now in Arizona. And it's worth noting that the Arizona police are extremely aggressive. Law enforcement officers shoot one person roughly every 5 days. And this fact, along with a variety of notorious cases of overreach by Arizona cops, prompted James to focus on police in a state where they appear to have unfettered power. Unfortunately, James paid a steep price for doing so 2 weeks ago when he happened upon an incident outside of Tucson, Arizona. He had been out monitoring police throughout the night and was on his way home when he stopped to exercise his First Amendment rights, taking video of public servants from the sidewalk. And I'll let him tell the story of what happened next. James, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I had been out watching police stop all night that night with a group of people. I wasn't by myself that night, and we wrapped it up. We were all going home. We all got in our separate cars. We were leaving, and I saw this traffic stop, and it's just a thing that I do. When I see a traffic stop, I want to turn on my camera. Most of the time, nothing at all happens, and that's good. It's just a preventative measure, and from what I've seen, having the camera there a lot of times makes it so that nothing happens, and that's a good thing. So I saw this traffic stop, and I just walked up to start recording it.
You're gonna get sued. You guys can't just put up tape every time you want to move a camera. No, that's not the way the law works. All right, guys, you got my lawyer on the phone. This is gonna be it. I need names of everybody getting sued here tonight.
Now, you say that you were approached by the police and they came out to restrain and arrest you. Tell us what happened.
I kind of got the thing right off the bat that the young guy ego was big enough that he might actually at least temporarily detain me for recording. And so I even narrated to the camera, to the live audience, I think this guy might be stupid enough to try to detain me.
Leave me alone. Go do your job. Go do your job. Leave me alone. I'm asking you nicely to leave me alone. There's no fucking perimeter. I can be all the way.
And I'm going to tell you, step over there.
What is your name?
Sir, go over there.
What is your name? Get your supervisor now. I told you to get your supervisor.
Never it crossed my mind that rather than detain me or put handcuffs on me, he's going to throw me to the ground, beat me in the face, and take me.
Don't touch me! Get your fucking hands off of me! Get your hands off of me! Get your hands off of me! Fucking piece of shit! Fuck you! Get off of me! Stop resisting! Get off of me! Get off of me! Get off of me! Stop resisting! Get off of me! Stop resisting! Stop punching me!
And you guys seen it time and time again. What do they say when beating somebody who's not moving? Stop resisting.
Resisting! Stop punching me! Get off of me! It's just a fucking camera, you dumbass! Get off of me!
And it's almost like they've gotten used to narrating for any auto that's picking up or that's standing by. They almost like they're trying to convince themselves this guy's resisting. But you know, it escalated quickly. He decided he was going to do something. He immediately threw me to the ground. I'm on the ground and he's repeating me. He actually stops for a moment, gets up. I stay where I am. He gets up, takes his taser out, comes back down and starts tasing me.
Get off of me! It's just a fucking camera, you dumbass! Get off of me! Get off of me! Let go of my camera, you piece of shit! Get off of me! Get off!
Now, some critics have said that you were provoking the cops, but all I saw was you holding a camera. How do you respond to those critics?
You know, I see where their point comes from, because over time I've gotten really tired. Too often when I walk up to record a stop, the first thing that they do is try to stop me from recording. And that's what these officers did. I was on my last stop of the night. Nothing to happen. I expect this to be over in 5 minutes and I want to go home. Immediately when they start in with, you can record, but my first response, I believe, had the F word in it. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think it was something along the lines of F off. Shut up, leave me alone. I'm tired of the game. If you want, they don't even say hi, hello, how you doing? My name is just stop recording us, or just immediately jumping to barking orders. I'm tired of it.
Now, Arizona police shoot someone roughly every 5 days. Do you think citizens are safe in this state?
I've been around the entire country doing this. I've been in Texas a lot. Texas cops are pretty dangerous. Over my time, I'm beginning to believe that Arizona cops may be some of the most dangerous. At least in other jurisdictions, a lot of times when we start pounding pavement there, we start recording them, when we start in complaints, we start broadcasting to the world what they're doing, they usually start calming down. They start realizing, okay, our crimes are being documented and showed to the world. What I've seen in Arizona, in Tucson specifically, the more document bad behavior, it's almost as if their bad behavior becomes worse. And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. I'm going to continue documenting, though.
James, I'm really glad you mentioned Texas, because we spoke to a 64-year-old man that bought a car at a police auction, and the very first time it was driven, he was pulled over and drugs were allegedly found there. Do you think this is part of the policing for profit model?
As a whole, is a for-profit policing model. I mean, in 1970s, when the drug war started, 1.3% of the population was estimated to be addicted to illicit drugs. Today, that number is identical. So certainly the drug war can't be about stopping people getting addicted to drugs. The only other thing it can be is for profit, from the street level on finding people to the prison industrial complex and keeping those hotel rooms full.
Now, unlike our counterparts in government, we actually feel it's part of our job to account for what we do and why we do it. Because I'm sure there's some of you who watch these videos and say, Taya, why are you so focused on policing? So what if there are a couple bad apples in the bunch that misbehave? What's the big deal? Why do you care about cop watchers like James Freeman? Couldn't they just stay home and stay out of trouble instead of engaging cops and getting arrested? Well, that's a good question, and I'm going to answer it. Consider a recent development in Minneapolis. As I'm sure you remember, Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was a cop who is now facing charges of murder for kneeling on the neck of George Floyd in this harrowing video. Floyd's death, as a result of his actions and the other 3 officers on the scene, set off nationwide protests and a debate over how law enforcement can and should be reformed. One of those critical points of discussion was the idea of police funding. As we've noted before on this show, police spending in cities across the country continues to rise, while the budgets of other critical agencies like education or recreation stay stagnant or endure cuts. And so, as you can see by the headlines being shown on the screen now, that discussion has taken an odd turn. That's because the Minneapolis City Council's decision to cut just $8 million from a nearly $200 million budget has been characterized as groundbreaking. Council members told the media how painful and difficult the decision was to cut roughly 5% of an agency that already gets the lion's share of city funding. And it's worth noting, is accused of murdering a man while pursuing the heinous crime of allegedly, and we emphasize the word allegedly, of passing a counterfeit $20 bill. Now let's move to Washington, D.C. and home to our venerable congressional leaders. Amid a pandemic, amid record unemployment, amid a national health crisis that has killed roughly 285,000 people, where roughly 10 million people have lost their jobs, Congress is stalled in providing critical aid because, wait for it, they can't agree on whether or not to add $300 a week to unemployment checks. That's right, in a country where economic inequality continues to grow, where the gap between the haves and the have-nots is a gaping wound in our social contract, a move to offer a meager $300 a week results in an insurmountable impasse. Meanwhile, cutting a meager percentage of an already inflated police budget is characterized as tragic. The point is, as I already made clear, policing occupies an outsized and seemingly disproportionate space in our civic landscape. And as we've said many times before, law enforcement has managed to insulate itself from the realities of the world the rest of us are forced to live in. A place where healthcare is a luxury, pensions are non-existent, and being unemployed and broke during a pandemic is simply an inconvenient truth not worthy of concerted action. And that's the point we're trying to make about American policing. What this contrast in priorities makes abundantly clear is spending on cops, and by extension traffic arrests, minor drug arrests, and all the other, but bullshit, is that we never examine its true civic value. We never ask the fundamental question, why do we need this? What's the point of paying high salaries, lifetime pensions, and pricey perks to pull people over for tinted windows? And why is it when a citizen with a camera makes the simple and constitutionally protected decision to record the police, he's met with force so disproportionate, it seems calibrated solely to the point that those protected rights don't actually even exist? Those are the questions we have to continue to ask if we want to preserve the right to ask these questions without fear. I want to thank my guest, James Freeman, for taking the time to speak with us today and for his work as a citizen journalist. Thank you, James. And I have to thank intrepid reporter Stephen Janis for his writing, reporting, and editing on this piece. Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks for having me, Taya. I appreciate it.
And of course, I have to thank friend of the show, Noli D. Thanks, Noli D. And I want you watching to know that if you have evidence of police misconduct or brutality, please share it with us and we might be able to investigate. Please reach out to us. You can email us tips privately at par@therealnews.com and share your evidence of police misconduct. You can also message us at Police Accountability Report on Facebook or Instagram, or at Eyes on Police on Twitter. And of course, you can always message me directly at Taya's Baltimore on Twitter and Facebook. And please do like and comment. I do read your comments and appreciate them, and I try to answer your questions when I can. My name is Taya Graham, and I am your host of the Police Accountability Report. Please be safe out there.